Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Nunez, President and co-founder of Animal Equality, and I'm joined here today by a very, very special person and guest that is Sean Thomas. And Sean, for the last 5 years, has led Animal Equality's investigation department worldwide in 8 countries. He is Animal Equality's International Director of Investigations. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Sharon. Yeah, it's great to be here.
So investigations are at the core of what Animal Equality does. They are our core program. Animal Equality has been doing investigations since its foundation. We've done investigations in all of the 8 countries that we're working in. And thanks to Animal Equality's investigations, we've been able to convince companies to pass animal welfare laws, change laws and policies in different countries, reach millions through the media. Our investigations have been on the New York Times, on the BBC, on CNN, on El País, on Corriere della Sera, on the Indian Times, reaching millions of people and educating them about the cruelties of the animal industry. So that's what we're going to be speaking about today. We're going to be answering the questions, your questions that are related to what happens in an investigation, how does someone become an investigator, and the backstage of our investigations department. So I'm going to start with the question for Sean, and the question is to get us warmed up and talking about this important subject. Sean, what was the investigation that has impacted you the most?
I would have to say it was the first time that I was working undercover at a pig farm. This would be in the late 1990s, and the technology was very different from what we have now in terms of cameras, and it was such an intense experience. It was probably the most violent situations that I've ever witnessed, and I learned a lot being on my own, not really having a mentor around me at the time, and so all of the things that I witnessed, which was just horrific abuse of these mother pigs that were kept on a breeding farm in North Carolina, and figuring out how to document this and how to do the actual job of working on a pig farm. It was it changed kind of my view of investigations and how important they are. It was also an investigation that resulted in the first felony animal cruelty charges against workers on a factory farm in the US. So it had this incredible impact kind of emotionally within the legal system. And then I think just shaped how I wanted to conduct investigations in the future. And a lot of what I pass on to investigators now is kind of based from those experiences.
Thanks, Sean. And I also want to mention that Sean has done investigations in 7 countries worldwide, and he's visited hundreds of facilities. One of the investigations that Sean participated in with another organization actually resulted in the largest meat recall in the history of the United States, and downed animals not being allowed to be considered, to be consumed, to be considered food any longer. I wanted to talk about an experience that was really intense for me. Between 2011 and 2012, Animal Equality carried out one of the first investigations into rabbit farms to ever be conducted in Spain, and one of the largest investigations in rabbit farms to ever be conducted in Europe. We investigated 72 farms and 4 rabbit slaughterhouses. And of course, rabbits are furry, they're beautiful animals. And I felt a very strong connection. But specifically during one of the investigations where I was actually joined by photographer Joanne MacArthur, we went into a farm to take some photos, and as we were leaving, we noticed in one of the big trash cans that there was a plastic bag, and then there was you can see it in the picture there. There was a little bit of movement. So we went over, we opened the bag, and there was a live rabbit. So we took the rabbit, we brought him with us immediately to a vet. We named him Garulo. He was very, very tiny, very, very small. And unfortunately, Garulo died a few hours later at the vet. He was so sick, and his internal organs were so damaged that he couldn't make it beyond the vet, beyond the farm. But I had a very strong emotional connection with that animal, and it reminded me of how animals are so discarded. They're just thrown into the trash when they're still alive, because there's no economic profit that can be made from their lives. And that's something that is very present to us at Animal Equality. We see animals as sentient living beings, and we're fighting an industry that sees animals as trash. Just throw them into the bin, when there's no economic benefit to their lives. So let's go into some of the questions that our followers, our wonderful followers and supporters sent us. I think we can both answer this one, Sean, but you can go first, of course. What led you to becoming an investigator?
Yeah, it's I was interested in animal rights since I was a young child. At 10, I tried to become a vegetarian. Didn't have much support at the time from my family, and but then was vegetarian again as a teenager, and then vegan at 18. So in about 1990, I was vegan and just getting more involved in animal rights. And at the time, I started a student animal rights group. And I happened to live very close to a large laboratory breeding facility where all of the monkeys that were used in research at the university were being held. And so I used my at the time I was going through anthropology. I wanted to be a primatologist when I graduated. And so I just used that as kind of a cover to go inside the laboratory and take some pictures, and then launched this campaign. And the more I became involved in campaigning for animal rights at the time, there weren't a lot of images of farmed animals that kind of demonstrated a lot of the things that we were talking about. We were always talking about the fact that pigs are castrated, or they're, like you say, animals are discarded. And we were talking about all of these things, and people would say, oh, but like, what proof do you have that this actually happens? You're just fervent animal rights activists. And I said, well, that's a fair question. So we need to develop these images. And so that's when I kind of embarked on this journey of just traveling around with a video camera myself, and then became involved with some other larger organizations. And from then on was undercover that entire time. So I always say the only job I've actually had, the kind of professional job I've actually had, is doing investigations. I went kind of directly from university into doing that until joining Animal Equality now and managing investigations.
Yeah, well, it's a very important job to have that means so much to animals. My story is similar in the sense that when Animal Equality started, we started in 2006 in Spain. There was almost no footage of what happened inside factory farms in Spain. And I remember we would stand outside Burger King or McDonald's, or we would stand in the main plaza, and we would show these pictures of animals in farms and slaughterhouses in the US. Maybe some of them were even taken by Sean. And people would say to us, oh, that doesn't happen in Spain, that doesn't happen here. And it became to the realization that, well, it does happen. We know it happens, but we need to show it to the public. We need to have actual footage inside farms and slaughterhouses in Spain. The first investigation we did as Animal Equality was as rudimentary as one of our co-founders, Jose, getting a bus and traveling to slaughterhouses in the north of Spain and filming as much as he could. we still use that footage today. It was on national newspapers in Spain, and artist Bansky used it as part of one of his art installations. And I quickly came to realize that if we wanted to do the investigations of the magnitude that we needed to get media attention and create public awareness about what was happening to animals, I needed to be involved too. So for me, it really was about just wanting to tell people the stories and the cruelties that happened behind factory farms. Let's go to another question. This one is from Juan, and he's asking us, "Are you vegan?" I can take that one first. Juan, yes, I am vegan. I've been vegan since 2001, so for 21 years. And of course, for me, it's a fundamental part of who I am. I don't understand doing the work that I do, dedicating my life to reducing the suffering of animals and contributing to that suffering in any way. So yes, I'm a vegan. What about you, Sean? I guess that it's a yes too.
Yeah, similarly, I think as soon as I went to university, I became vegan, and I was cooking for myself, and I didn't know anyone who was vegan at that time. And I know the first nights of living by myself and trying to make vegan food, not realizing how long you had to cook chickpeas before you could eat them was a rude awakening. But yeah, things have changed a bit since then, and it's so much easier to be vegan. There's just no reason not to make that switch.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time I bought soy milk at a supermarket and I tried it, and it was really bad 20 years ago. This wasn't here in the US. It tasted like grass, and I was like, oh, this is my life now. But anyway, thankfully there's so many vegan options now. It's so easy to be vegan that yeah, there's a lot of more people that are going vegan. Okay, let's answer this question by Chella. Thanks, Chella, for your question. This one's for you, Sean. What does a typical day as an investigator consist of?
Yeah, and so there are a lot of different days, and I would say a lot of them are not the same. But I'll start with kind of an experience here in the US when I was working undercover, and I would be taking jobs in slaughterhouses or on factory farms, and you know, you're waking up extremely early, so maybe at 4:30 in the morning, and preparing the camera equipment, and you know, having to do just your normal daily routine at the same time. And oftentimes I'd be driving up to 45 minutes just through these rural areas to get to the farm or to the slaughterhouse. And then you're, you know, at say a pig farm, you're showering in, you're you know, doing all of the work that everyone is doing on the farm. Like if the at the some of these breeding farms, there are litters of piglets being born every day, and so you're just constantly working. Or, you know, at the slaughterhouse, as soon as you arrive, you're bringing cows off the trucks, or with pigs, kind of moving them around constantly. And so it's very intense, and it's a lot of manual labor. Usually our shifts would be anywhere from 8 to 12 hours of work, where you might get 15-minute breaks and then a short lunch break. And so then afterwards, the routine continues. And so if you're working at a farm, you might get back home at about 4:30 in the afternoon, but then the second job begins, and you have to switch back into kind of the clerical work of all of the organization that goes into looking at the files and taking down your notes of what you saw and who did what. And so it's kind of this grueling schedule, and then trying to fall asleep and repeat it over and over again for weeks at a time. Before that, there's often just days and days of driving around and locating the facilities, and you know, when I was in Mexico, going to these slaughterhouses there, we weren't working at the slaughterhouse, but we were talking our way inside to be able to film. So we would be up at 2 or 3 in the morning and arriving at the slaughterhouses before they opened and began work, and having to negotiate our way inside and then wait for the animals to arrive. And so it's this intensity that lasts for days, and in some cases for weeks and months.
Wow. And what would you say is, you've done so many undercover investigations, 100 facilities. What is the most difficult part for you?
I think there are moments when you feel the kind of the excitement of, okay, we've gotten inside. The filming was successful today, and everything is working great. It's maybe a couple of weeks later when you're getting very tired just from the monotony of the schedule, and then all of the additional organization and work that needs to be done. And just that repetition, I know, can just be really straining. There were some jobs at this pig farm in Oklahoma where I got some serious injuries to my shoulders and hands, and you have to just kind of keep working through that and not want to jeopardize the integrity of the investigation by having to leave early or not being able to be in position to film what you need to film. So that kind of mental exhaustion is the most difficult part to combat, when you start doubting if it will have an effect after you're done. Does it really matter if we stay an extra day to try and get a photo that's better than the ones that we have, or shows something in a clearer way? And you have to fight through that and say, yeah, it's better to have 100 photos or videos of this than just to have one and think that you've done enough, because we know that, like the example you're saying with trying to convince people, they want to see, and they want to see it from a local perspective, or they want to see it from a company that makes some impact on their lives. And so that kind of mental fortitude to keep pushing through and be able to get these clear examples of what's happening to animals on factory farms can be the biggest challenge sometimes.
Yeah, and that's so important. And one of the reasons why also at Animal Equality, we've always done these very large investigations. So in India, we did an investigation into the dairy industry, and our team there visited over 145 dairies. In Spain, the investigation we released into pig farms was the biggest investigation to ever be done inside the pig industry in Spain, and we visited over 170 pig farms. And as I was mentioning before, with the rabbit investigation I talked about in the beginning, we visited 70 rabbit farms throughout Spain. And this is because we want to show that abuse is systemic, that these aren't individual cases. This isn't happening in one place that we, randomly visited. This is happening in all of the farms and all of the slaughterhouses that we visit. We find cases of course, animal suffering, because the system causes suffering, but also of animal cruelty and animal abuse. So it's really important to ensure that we have, as you're saying, as much documentation as possible. Our next question is from Carrie, Wendy, and Guillermo. Have you ever been suspected of working undercover? If so, how did you handle the suspicion? I've never done undercover investigations like the ones Sean has done and that we're carrying out in some countries now, like the US, the UK, Germany, and others. I have entered farms, sometimes with farmers' permission, and actually, it was in the farm where we found Garulo that was in the plastic in the plastic bag in the trash can. Where after hours taking photos and asking pictures, one of the farmers, there was two farmers, one of them, he was kind of like playing along. He didn't seem to be suspicious at all, but then his son came and he was clearly very suspicious of having three women there asking all sorts of strange questions about rabbits, because they liked rabbits, and taking pictures and videos and going under the cages to film. And he said, where you started asking, where are you from? We're like, oh, we're from Canada, and we just love rabbits. And he wanted to He wanted our passports, and he just wanted all sorts of information. He wanted to take photos of us. So we suddenly were in a big hurry, and we rushed out and drove away from the farm. And thankfully, it was one of the last investigations we were doing in that area in Catalonia. And actually, that investigation, that 70 farms that we investigated throughout Spain, was one of the reasons why the European Parliament in 2017, I think it was, voted to improve the welfare of rabbits throughout the European Union. That went then to the European Commission, that is like the executive branch of the European Parliament, and unfortunately, they didn't bring forward changes to rabbit welfare legislation as strong as we wanted them. But it was very important for public debate in Spain, public debate in Europe, and most importantly, public debate at the European Parliament. So I'm sure you have a more intense story, Sean. Have you ever been suspected of working undercover, and how did you handle that suspicion?
Yeah, it's funny. I never had anyone confront me about working undercover. I definitely worked on farms where there was a lot of talk about what they would do if they ever found an undercover investigator working at the farm. In one place, the person carried a gun in their truck all the time, just a matter of personal preference, and they just said if they ever found anyone, they'd just go to their truck and get the gun and shoot them. At another pig farm that I worked at, in the training for that farm job, they actually played the investigation that I did at the previous farm. These were two huge, it was the top or the second largest pig farming company in the US, and then the third largest. And I had worked at the second largest, and now I was working at the third largest, and they played the investigation. And I thought that they were about to say, "We know that this was you." And then they just turned to everyone in the room and said, "Okay, make sure that no one gets caught doing any of this type of stuff on the farm." So it was just a matter of kind of sitting there and keeping a straight face, and then kind of laughing about it to myself as I drove to work the next day.
Wow, iron nerves, no? Just to stand there while they're showing you this footage and thinking that they're going to turn to you. Did you just stand there, and were you like thinking of something, or I don't know, running out or something, or just like, okay, just let's wait through this one out?
Yeah, my impulse actually was to kind of smile a bit when the footage came on, because it was such a coincidence. But I was just staring and with no expression, and just was waiting to kind of say, "Hey, why are you playing this? I don't know what this is about." But they were actually using it as kind of a point to lecture that, hey, watch out, don't get caught on camera like this other company did.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's move on to a question by Karen and Gabriel. Does it take a certain personality to be able to work as an investigator? What do you look for in candidates? So as I was saying, Sean oversees our investigations department globally in 8 different countries, and he's interviewed and trained dozens, if not, I don't know, hundreds, but definitely dozens of people. So will you give us a little bit of insight into the personality of what you're looking for in an investigator or in a candidate for an undercover investigation, Sean?
Yeah, and it's a lot of people want to be an investigator and want to help animals, and you can certainly help animals in many ways, because a lot of people just aren't suited to being investigators, and it does take this kind of sense that we're talking about, that in that moment you might be seeing something that's horrible, or you're in these pictures here, you're seeing all of these confined animals, and someone's impulse who just wants to help animals might be to confront the farmer in that moment, or grab one of those animals and run out and just have that momentary feeling that they've helped. but we're looking for people who have that kind of patience. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and just being able to have that kind of sense of composure, to be able to document these things very clearly, and be able to kind of deal with the fact that it's not really an exciting job. I think a lot of people come in thinking that it's very exciting, when a lot of it can just be mundane, whether it's constantly doing research, or just the amount of travel and time away from home that can kind of, really disrupt people's lives. And the kind of disruption to your normal life is why most people end up leaving the job. They want to help animals, but they don't want to always be seeing these things that they might take with them. And it can really disturb people. And you don't get to go home to your friends every night and say, oh, guess what I saw today, and kind of work through it all the time. So it's a very kind of specific person, and there aren't 5 boxes that we tick off with everyone. It's kind of a combination, and some people arrive at that combination differently. Like myself, I was, my mother's been a journalist for over 60 years, and kind of ingrained in us this kind of sense of discipline to facts and hard work and patience. So those things I kind of relied on a lot, but other people have different skill sets that can also be beneficial. Yeah, it's something that people really need to kind of confront within themselves. And sometimes we do that after we receive applications, and I might send someone a video and say, hey, watch this, and just think, do you really want to be there in that, standing there and seeing this firsthand? Because it's very different than watching it in a video. And then a lot of times people never reply after they watch a couple of videos and kind of put themselves in that position. So yeah, it's not an easy choice, but we're always looking for people who are dedicated to fulfilling that role.
And we're actually hiring for undercover investigators now in several countries, specifically here in the US. So I'll make a comment at the end, but check out our jobs section on our website if you're interested in becoming an undercover investigator. So I know that one of the things that I learned from you, Sean, that I was surprised about and shocked about when impressed about when I first heard about it was onboarding, getting someone ready to do an undercover investigator. I don't know how much you want to share or you can share, but can you talk to us a little bit about that? If someone becomes an investigator, they apply to the job, they pass the first tests related to character and being able to do the job, the patients, what does that onboarding look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an assessment that we have to do, because in the US, we're doing these employment investigations where most of your time is spent doing hard manual labor. There's no way around that. And that can be a real shock to the system for people who've never had to get up at 5 a.m. every day and then be immersed in just kind of hard farm work. And I shouldn't actually say farm work, because that gives a different sense of what the conditions are like. It's industrial factory work, whether you're on what the industry calls a pig farm. It's really these warehouses, and you're walking on concrete and moving large animals all day long. I shouldn't say farm or farm work, because it's not caring for animals. And sometimes people apply and say, I have a background in caring for animals. I grew up on a farm, and I took care of calves and pigs and chickens. And so that's actually not a beneficial skill that these companies are looking for. They're not hiring farm animal stewards. They're hiring people that can manage a warehouse full of animals, that can pull out the dead pigs that die every single day. When I was working on a breeding farm, that was one of the main things that you did. that there'd be dead pigs, dead piglets, and you'd go around and pull them out. If that was a mother pig, she would weigh maybe 260 pounds. On a fattening farm or finish farm where the pigs are being prepared for slaughter, every day there's a couple in each barn that are dying. And so that's kind of your main work, is pulling out the dead, putting them in big garbage heaps. On a hen farm where I worked, that was almost half the day, was just going through all of the cages. In one barn, there might be 100,000 hens, and just pulling out the dead ones. And you would have to go row after row after row with a flashlight, because it's kept so dark in these barns, and just pull out the dead ones that have been trampled or had died because they couldn't access water. So when people kind of come in and think, oh, I know how to care for animals, I say, well, this is not what you're going to be doing. It's, can you lift a dead pig and throw them into a dumpster? And so we do a lot of that kind of physical evaluation before we even get into all of the other type of training.
Yeah, and people at factory farms aren't generally caring for animals, right? Their animals are a machine that become products or produce products, and it's about making that process as efficient and as fast as possible. So a lot of people are asking, Sean, if you could explain more the duties on the job. Can you go a little bit more into that? What does like a responsibility, a duty, the everyday of an undercover investigator at animal equality look like?
Yeah, there's a lot of research and preparation. So in all of our countries, regardless of kind of the tactic that we're using, we want to break down these supply chains. We want to understand the relationship between companies. Who is supplying this company, and where do these animals go? What kind of labeling system is being used to promote them to the public to make it seem like there's a higher standard of care on one farm versus another? So we're doing all of this background research, and then a lot of travel to kind of evaluate these facilities. So a lot of it is that just kind of an intense amount of background, and throughout that we're preparing mentally for what the scenario will be, whether it's working at a farm or using some other pretext to gain entry to a slaughterhouse, and kind of building this story, the awareness of the area. And so there's a tremendous amount of that research that's going in beforehand. And then kind of like we've been saying on these employment investigations, the day-to-day is this kind of dual job, this intense work life on the facility, whether it's a slaughterhouse or a industrial dairy or pig farm or hen farm, and then there's the job at night. And so the two kind of interchange with each other seamlessly all day long. It's not it's almost a lifestyle versus a job, and that might last for a couple of weeks before we kind of begin that planning stage for our next target. But yeah, it's kind of that ever kind of growing kind of job duties. There's not one day that's going to be, okay, this is all you have to do today. It seems to be that there are these, you know, it might be bumps in the road where we have to reevaluate and just switch everything up. And so people have to be very flexible about their mental approach to all of this work. We can invest an enormous amount of time into something and say, okay, actually, well, legislation just passed, and so we have to kind of reevaluate, you know, if we can even work in this state now, like in the US, where they pass ag-gag laws, and we could be preparing for investigations in a state like Iowa, and then think, okay, wow, there's been an ag-gag law that we thought was going to be overturned, but the very next week it was upheld, and so we're out of that state now, and we have to just reassess where we're going to go next.
Yeah, and something about animal equality investigations too is that we try to make sure that they are as strategic as possible. And I can give a recent example. Just yesterday, we released an investigation into slaughterhouses in Brazil. It's an investigation that Sean himself did. So he traveled to Brazil and was able to gain access to slaughterhouses, and all of that footage was released yesterday, getting media attention in different media in Brazil. But the reason why this investigation is strategic was released just before the Brazil Senate tries to pass a bill getting rid of federal inspections within slaughterhouses in Brazil. So it was incredibly important, and we've seen this throughout the years, where the investigations we've done in Jalisco, for example, in Mexico, investigations that Sean was also participated in, as well as members of our team, are shown in the Congress of Jalisco, with dozens of Congress people watching this footage and voting for the first legislation or the first laws in the first protections for farmed animals in the state of Jalisco, and in Mexico, making, for example, stunning animals in slaughterhouses mandatory. So that's critical at Animal Equality. Investigations are at the core of what we do. They are the program that Animal Equality focuses on primarily, and they are the program that allows us to change legislations, to change companies, to educate millions of people. We have a very interesting question that's been asked by Carrie, Jessica, Sharon, Chella, Guillermo, and Nina. How difficult is it to stand by and see cruelty firsthand and not be able to intervene? How do you remain calm and strong when faced with such difficult situations? I'll go first with this one. I've visited about 50 farms in different countries. Most of the farms I've visited have been in Spain. Hen farms, a caged hen farm was the first investigation I was ever a part of. Chicken farms, pig farms, cow farms. I've been lucky that I've been able to rescue some of the animals and help some of the animals in these conditions. Animal Equality in Europe carried out what are called open rescues, where we would enter different facilities in Europe, in Spain, in the UK, in Italy. We would do an investigation. We would film as much as we could related to the conditions of the animals. Specifically, one of the most impactful are hens in cages, where there's hundreds of hens in cages that are so small, and an individual hen can't even spread their wings or move. And I've been able to take some of these animals, bring them to the vet, and give them a new life at a sanctuary in freedom. And the transformation is immediate, and it really helps you understand the cruelty of factory farming, from an animal that never sees the day of light, is never able to scratch, is never able to walk, is never able to spread their wings, is never able to have any healthy behavioral relationships with other animals or humans, to take them to the vet and then bring them to a sanctuary and see the moments when they actually take those first steps in freedom. And for many of these animals, it's the first time they're able to walk, to take a dust bath, a sand bath, to be able to feel the sun. And it's truly special and magical. Of course, it's not something that we can do on a regular basis. So then the question, I pass it on to you. How difficult is it to stand by and see the cruelty firsthand and not be able to intervene, Sean?
Yeah, it was, when I was working on those first farms, you're confronted by just the enormity of this issue. The first pig farm where I worked on, that very first day, the manager beat a mother pig to death with a crowbar and cut her open and said, "Okay, everyone get those piglets out of her and resuscitate them," because she was too sick to deliver them. And so you're just seeing this world it was so alien to me. And it was such a shock to be watching this animal be killed and then have the person say, "Okay, now let's save the babies." It was this moral idea that didn't make any sense except for the fact and what you've been saying, that these are not animals, they are products in the industrial factory farm setting. So of course it makes perfect sense in that scenario for that manager to say, yes, I'm going to kill the mother and then be desperate to rescue those piglets because they are the money for that system. And when I left the farm that first day, I cried driving back home and was just so horrified at what I'd seen. But then I actually said, I'm not going to cry anymore about this, because that's for myself. The tears that I'm shedding now are just for myself. It's not solving the pain of those animals. If I want to help them, we have to show more and more to the world what is actually happening. And just, you have to set aside your own feelings in those moments. I don't tell that to everyone. I just say that that's for myself, what I expect. And if I want to continue on and do this, then that was kind of the commitment that I made in that moment.
Thank you for sharing that. There's some questions that are coming up on the chat that I want to make sure we get to, and I'll go back to some of the other questions that our supporters have asked. So a lot of people are asking, how do we choose which slaughterhouse to investigate?
Yeah, and that kind of goes back into the research strategy that you were talking about, in terms of we're wanting to link with legislation, whether it's like what we're doing in Mexico, where the investigations are the basis for legislation that is proposed. And we've been so successful in Mexico. It's absolutely amazing how we're fueling that legislative process. Or in Brazil, where we want to counteract measures that are being passed that will reduce protections for animals. So in Brazil, they want to remove inspectors from slaughterhouses and allow slaughterhouses to do self-inspection. It's very similar to a program that's in the test phase in the US, and it's a high-speed slaughter for pigs. And it allows companies to increase the speed, do self-reporting for many of the points in the slaughterhouse, and we want to be able to counteract those things. So we would want to be able to do the research into which slaughterhouses are part of this program, or which slaughterhouses are connected to a company that we want to influence. So all of that goes into this kind of larger matrix that we're trying to use to strategize and have the most impact with these investigations.
Yeah. Going back to the thanks for that. That was one of the questions. I wanted to make sure that we get to some of the questions that people are asking live at this time. And thanks everyone who is watching and interested in this such important topic for animals. I wanted to go back to the cruelty firsthand and not being able to intervene. You can't always, or very seldom actually, can you rescue an animal. And again, this is something that we've done only in some countries in Europe. But I also remember once we did an investigation with actress Rooney Mara, and she wanted to see firsthand what was happening inside chicken farms and pig farms because she's a vegan, she's an activist, she's an incredible advocate for animals. And we went into pig farms in the UK and chicken farms. And I remember particularly there was this facility we were in, and the mother pigs, the sows, were in what are called farrowing crates, and these are the cages, the crates where they give birth, and where they're with their baby piglets for some weeks before the pigs are taken to be raised, and then finally after 4 to 6 months to be sent to slaughter. And I remember while we were there, and this has happened many times as I visited pig farms. One of the female pigs, when she started giving birth to the pigs, so we were filming it, just seeing the scene of this mother, this mammal giving birth to her piglets in a metal cage is very impactful. But as she was giving birth, one of the piglets generally, the mother gives birth, and they take a few seconds or a few minutes to get to where they can suckle and be close to her mother. But one of the piglets had got wrapped up in the placenta, and I was able to go into the farrowing crate. I was, of course, wearing a biosecurity suit and untangle this piglet and bring him closer, bring him or her close to the mother for him to be able to suckle. And it's the process of giving birth that is so important, right? So we give it such importance as humans, and we see that in animals. It's just, another part of the process that we want to make as quick and effective as possible. And it doesn't matter if some of the piglets die during the process, because the only thing that matters are the numbers, that they reach certain numbers. Okay, they're being told that there's 10 minutes left, so I'm going to move on to some of the questions that got the most asked. One of them that I want to get to, Sean, is how are investigators able to cope with what they see, and what resources are available to them?
Yeah, so a lot of that comes in through our screening of candidates. So like we're talking about, if you really love and want to help animals, maybe it isn't necessarily the right job. So we're doing a lot of screening in that first step, and then a lot of preparation for what people will experience and what they'll encounter in those different kind of harrowing situations that they might be faced with, like what you just described, witnessing these births and just how harsh the conditions are, and that overwhelming feeling that, okay, here I am placing this piglet, then the mother cannot even turn and meet her piglet and guide her to be able to nurse. It's such an overwhelming emotion when you see the pigs in those cages, where they cannot even make eye contact with their babies in those first moments. And so we're doing a lot of preparation for all of that. And then there is simply that, I get phone calls after work from the investigators who say, I'm so tired, I'm so exhausted. The facility is working us 14 hours. And then we have to go back tomorrow and go right back to work at 7 a.m. and I only have 4 hours of sleep. Can I just do my report on the weekend? And we talk through all of these things in that moment to kind of be there and share that experience, and have that outlet available to them. And then we also have counseling services for people who really feel like they're overwhelmed by what they've seen, want to take a break from doing that kind of work, and we offer counseling services to those people as well. But it is a very difficult thing to be a part of, and most of that just comes from the intense amount of preparation that we're doing, so that people aren't overwhelmed in those moments.
Stephanie asks, were you ever able to get any farms or slaughterhouses shut down? Yes, absolutely. And I think we've calculated that thanks to Animal Equality's investigations, about 90 facilities have closed. So Animal Equality did an investigation into the dog and cat meat trade in China. And then we worked, after that investigation, we worked with authorities in the country, and we managed to get 44 stalls in a market that were selling cat and dog meat closed. And actually related to this investigation, our executive director in Italy, Alice, was just at the Italian Senate this week speaking about animal cruelty and speaking about the work that Animal Equality has done to document the slaughter of cats and dogs in China. And then another example is the investigations we did in Mexico as part of a campaign that was called Enemy of the Planet, Enemigo del Planeta, where we documented through drone footage and with investigations severe violations of environmental laws in Mexico, and managed to get 44 of those farms shut down for violations of environmental regulations. So this isn't necessarily one of our key strategies within the organization. We always want to make sure that we're able to achieve system change, so getting rid of cages, improving the welfare of chickens, passing laws, passing legislation that protects animal welfare, animals, farmed animals broadly. But they're definitely it's definitely litigation that we pursue when it's possible, and it is possible in some cases. Do you want to add anything to this, Sean?
Yeah, and it's, you know, we don't always have the perfect response from law enforcement. In the US, it can be very difficult to have them engage on some of these issues. We might see this horrific cruelty and someone from that community says, oh, well, what you're watching is just what happens on a farm and you're just too sensitive. And so a lot of these investigations, what we're trying to do is break down this barrier between the fact that animal cruelty laws are not designed just to protect dogs and cats. They're meant to prevent cruelty to all animals. And you know, a lot of law enforcement are not aware of that. They think, oh, well, if it happens at a slaughterhouse or inside this large company factory farm, then I don't even have the right to go in and do an investigation or challenge what they're doing. And so we have to do a lot of work with them to say, hey, actually, the law is there. It's there to protect animals. And you're just thinking that because they are going to be killed for meat, that they shouldn't be protected at any point along the way. And it's an error. And one of our most recent efforts to kind of further our investigative goals is with the Foster Farms lawsuit that we filed in California because law enforcement was unwilling to engage with us on the cruelty that we documented at the Foster Farms hatchery in California. We are now filing or have filed a lawsuit to seek damages as a result of that company's actions in their hatchery.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit, Sean. This is a question from Munawar that I want to make sure we get to. What are your thoughts on ag laws?
Yeah, ag laws are just very blatant barriers that the industry lobbies for. So the factory farming industry and the meat industry lobbies for these laws to prevent activists, journalists, anyone from taking pictures of animals in a factory farm or a slaughterhouse. There are various versions of these laws. Right now, they're active in a couple of states, Montana, North Dakota, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, and Alabama. And they're blatantly unconstitutional. And it's purely a way that the industry says, hey, we don't want to change our behavior. We want to continue our way that we make immense amounts of profits from the suffering of animals. And so what we'll do is we'll just have a law that protects us in a unique way. That restricts activists or groups like Animal Equality from even doing these investigations. So we're part of coalition efforts to overturn these laws and been successful most recently in North Carolina. And I think we'll see these laws fail the test in the courts, but in the meantime, it does restrict our ability to even show the public what happens to animals in these situations.
We're coming up to the end of our time, Sean, but I want to ask you a more general question. What is in the future of what's your vision for the future for Animal Equality's Investigations Department?
Yeah, we're always expanding the ways in which we conduct investigations, and we've used drones extensively in the past, and we've used them to kind of make the connection between these large factory farming facilities and the environmental impact that they have, and the pollution that they create. We've also used different types of cameras to show with the 360 cameras to kind of create this immersive journey into slaughterhouses and factory farms. So kind of the next phase of that is some of it is just following on our core principles of just being out there in more places. Mm-hmm. That just does take a lot of resources. The more we're able to put people out into the field and keep them there and get them to, like you were saying before, to present some of these investigations. We might have to go to 100 facilities and spend all of these hours, all of these weeks and months traveling, and that's incredibly resource intensive. And so we're spending a lot of time now finding the right people and doing this type of training and preparation so that we will be more impactful and be able to expand our programs in all of the countries. And that's the way that we can influence people's behavior the most, I believe.
Thank you so much. And I just want to thank everyone who's watching and reinforce that undercover investigations are at the core of who we are and what we do at Animal Equality. Sean has been leading and doing investigations for over 20 years. All of Animal Equality's executive directors have participated and actively work overseeing and working with Sean to do investigations. Overall, we've investigated over 500 facilities in all of the 8 countries that we're working in. And just last year in 2021, Animal Equality presented 19 investigations, and we hope to continue doing, we will continue doing this groundbreaking work around the world, because this is what animals need from us. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I ask you to please continue supporting this strong, serious, professional, dedicated work that Animal Equality's done, led by Sean, and reach out to us. You have our website, animalequality.org, if you have any questions about our work. And thank you so much, everyone, for asking, for participating, and for being part of the change that animals need. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.